Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
It was like a Lester Roloff home type of a place where it's like a drill instructor and they beat you and whip you into submission. They're like barely legal.
They were very into corporal punishment.
My mom was abusive on a daily basis. My dad to at least one of her kids every day.
My dad is equally a bad person who is not fit to be a pastor, not fit to be a parent. Number one, because he ever abused his kids. Even if it was only every couple months instead of every couple hours, he still should not have children or have an audience. And he also was very abusive towards my mother, which I will get into later. And he should have stopped that abuse. I have seen my mom hit an infant more times than I could count, and it wasn't even like, obviously a baby can't do anything wrong or break rules.
No.
So it'd be like, she's holding the
But
baby,
that's
the baby's
shocking.
crying, and she'd hit the baby. She would do it with her hand, and she would do it like with a wooden spoon.
Like she has an infant child, right, that is unable to walk, unable to crawl, unable to talk, and she's carrying them or has them like swaddled in a wrap like a baby carrier, and they're crying. She would, again, ask my brother or ask any advice. So it's like, this is crazy shit. But she would use like a wooden spoon or something and just like wrap them with it. But yeah, I would say serious beatings start around 4 or 5 years old, but just no, I've seen her hit a baby for crying.
So as early, any type of physical punishment started as early as a baby, right? My mom would hit the babies for crying. Not even like, hey, you did this wrong, you're going to be punished. She was just like a shut.
Oh, child abuse. Oh, no.
In Romans 1, one of the aspects, one of those things says without natural affection. I would describe somebody like that beats and tortures their little kids and has no remorse, doesn't care. That is somebody that is without natural affection.
More times than I can count. I'm talking 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old kids screaming for their life, begging for mercy because they're getting the absolute shit beaten out of them, right? Scared for their life. I know I was at times. And she never cared. The more they would scream, the angrier she'd get, and she would not stop, would not let up whatsoever. And then my parents proceeded to beat the absolute shit out of her for it. I don't know if she took the peanut butter cups or not. Probably not.
And that was one of the most concerning things is she'd have a little kid laying on the ground screaming, begging for mercy. And the more you did that, like the more angry it would make her and the harder she'd go. And these were not just spankings, beatings for doing something wrong. It would be she was mad, she didn't like the look of her, beating confessions out of us. There were many times that they would beat a kid until they admitted to something, whether or not they actually did it, just because they felt they did. And that's super wrong. Like, that's not right. With beatings, as far as like you did this, you're going to get a beating as a punishment, started at 3 years old.
None of the kids are safe in that home. I do not believe that my parents should be trusted or have access to their children. I am trying my best to get CPS to do something about it.
You should love your wife 5 years in, 10 years in, 15 years in, 20, sweeter as the years go by.
And then you would hear the sound, the bam, bam, beating sounds, my mom screaming.
I don't know what happened. He was just like beating her practically nonstop for like a day or two, like just really, really bad fight. He told me he was abusive from day one.
But I know there were a couple of outbursts where he would just like, bam, hit her in a fight. I remember at some age, my dad was having like an especially bad fight with my mom and couldn't get her to agree with him or do what he was saying or whatever. So he was kind of like, finally, like, I'm gonna use physical punishment. I use physical punishment on my kids to get them through what they say, and I'm gonna use that on you as well.
But my mom very much hated my dad. She told me this like on multiple occasions, years apart, about how often she would pray that he would die because she felt like that was like the best outcome. She's like, well, if he dies, because the other thing was she didn't want to discredit his ministry.
Mhm.
So she was kind of hoping he would die before anything came out like it is now.
So my mom decided that she was done with him and she wanted to leave him and get sole custody of the kids. And she wanted to basically, so she came out better on the divorce because then she'd be single parenting 12 kids. She wanted to get him put away for domestic abuse so she could, get the house, whatever, while he's off in prison. And she wanted to like testify that he was also abusive towards the kids so he wouldn't get any custody rights. At the time when I was a little kid and I'm getting beaten, and it's like, I don't know when that's going to stop. I don't know how that's going to stop. There definitely were times that I was afraid for my own life, afraid for my own safety on a daily basis as a little kid. And yeah, that is going to have a permanent damaging effect. I've noticed that also having an effect on my other siblings, picking up stuff, noticing stuff. And yeah, that's not a good way to raise a kid. It's not a healthy environment for a developing mind. The abuse, like I said, it was a daily thing. More times than I can count, she locked her kids outside in Phoenix in 115, 120-degree heat for hours on end. Again, ask my siblings. We were locked out there for hours on end with no water, with no food. If you knocked on the door and were asked for that stuff, you'd most likely get the shit beaten out of you because the whole reason she was doing it was just to get rid of us because she was annoyed by us. She didn't want to be around us because she doesn't like being a mom that much, doesn't like having them make kids. I got raised by a psychotic, terrible person. I genuinely believe my mom's a sociopath. I don't believe she's a good person. I believe she's a terrible, abusive person.
I'm not going to get into the whole argument of whether you should hit a child at all. But the standard that is set forth by the Bible and Arizona state law, my mom went well beyond that standard on a probably more often than daily basis.
The Bible, in its qualifications for a pastor, says ruling well your own house. Do you think that spousal and child abuse is ruling well your own house? That's a question you got to ask yourself.
He has this meeting and he said, I have never laid a finger on my wife. I have never hit my wife. I know that he did that for years. I know for a fact that's a lie. My siblings know for a fact that's a lie. And he knows he's publicly lying to his congregation, getting up from his congregation lying. That is something that he always preached makes you a false prophet and a horrible person. So if he truly believes everything he says he does, then I look at that and I go, why is he not afraid of God? It's not surprising at all to find out that he goes home and beats his wife.
But if he felt that we made him look stupid to church members, that really activated his rage, that really triggered him. So he grabbed my brother, threw him. His head hit we lived in a brick house at that time, hit a corner of a windowsill and split it open.
And Solomon had his head grabbed and his head was like smashed like a melon over it, and it split him to where you could see his exposed skull underneath the bone, well, underneath the skin. It split him to the bone, and he's permanently scarred on the side of his head. It's underneath his hair, so you can't see it all the time. I was in the other room when he got his head smashed, but I did see him bleeding all over the place. So I remember seeing him outside because then they promptly made him go like do yard work in the heat or something. He had like blood running down the side of his head, and like his whole shirt was covered in blood. He was, because obviously you've seen someone gets their head split, it bleeds pretty badly. So yeah, he was bleeding all over the place from that. I don't think I saw him get his head smashed though, no. But I heard about it, like he told me. There was absolutely stuff like that. We also used to get beaten with an electrical cord, which it's hard to describe how bad that is because it's really light and whippy, but it has like, a copper core or whatever, and that would basically leave you bloody. Like you'd get beaten bloody with one of those. He absolutely lives up to his preaching when it comes to beating kids. I strongly disapprove of that. I think that's excessive. It's barbaric. It's inhumane, but that absolutely happens.
It makes you bleed. It leaves marks. There's no aiming it. And it would hurt so bad. Like it would be like, okay, you're going to bend over and you're going to get hit on the back 4 times or 5 times, whatever their push was. And then it would be 1, 2 hits. You're on the ground. And then it would be you're laying on the ground. They're on top of you. They're beating you, screaming at you, and it's going all over.
You shouldn't just have to do as I say or I'll beat the crap out of you. At that point, if your child is that much of a delinquent, you failed a long time ago. My grandfather was visiting from Germany, and then he saw my mom spanking the girls, and he flipped out like, "Oh, that's barbaric! It's inhumane! You can't beat them." She was completely on board with it. Absolutely, she never did it as bad as him because as a woman, she physically can't beat somebody as hard as my father can. But she wasn't exactly encouraging him to stop either. So no, she was completely on board with it, at least to my knowledge. Yeah, but he, just stuff happens. He would just lose his shit, and everyone better watch out. If what he did was so right, he should have no problem saying, "I absolutely did," because everything I'm saying is not exaggerated and is 100% factual. So because of that, he then has a choice. He can either say that was wrong, made a mistake, sorry, or he can go and go, "No, I don't regret anything." Fair. Either way, since I'm completely telling the truth, I don't think there's any reason why he should not want this to be out there. Because if it's true and he did it and he was completely justified, then why would he be worried if people know what he did?
His kids are just, a couple of his kids are just misremembering, especially John's kind of just exaggerating some of the things that he said about his father. And, it's probably good punishment if the kids didn't like it. It's funny. It's like, well, we were punished and we didn't like it. It's like, no one likes punishment.
Oh, it's child abuse. Oh, no.
My brother was one time punished by my mom with a 2x4. And so they're just kind of latching on to whatever negative things they can dream up in their mind. And they haven't really had a lot of negative things. So they're just kind of inventing these things and allowing the world's vocabulary and language to pervert reality. There isn't some obvious issue. There is no clear error here. There is no clear situation. But at the end of the day, there's nothing obvious here. There's nothing clear here to change the status quo. I care about Pastor Anderson so much, and we need to make sure that we are giving pastors the benefit of the doubt. And I hope that his children will repent, get right with him, that their family will be restored, that we can delete some of these videos.
My dad always says, "I'm going to beat you within an inch of your life." That was something he would say a lot when he was talking about beatings, right? Something my mom said a lot. There were even a few things where my dad said, "If you do that, I will kill you." My dad is all bark, no bite. My dad won't beat somebody or have a physical confrontation unless it's a little kid or a woman, so he knows he can win. Me being a grown adult man, I don't think that he would be able to have that same control. There's a reason he targets little kids and women.
I'm so mean and I'm so bad and I'm such a jerk and I'm so, you say whatever you want. Oh yeah, that's wrong. That's just wrong. This should be obvious. We all know this is bad. I mean, look what the Bible is.
You can take one listen to him, hear the things he says, and be like, that is a very insecure, weak man. That is somebody who is not comfortable in his manhood, is not comfortable with himself, and he's deeply, clearly insecure. And he should have gone to therapy and resolved those issues instead of becoming a hateful, abusive person.
Would you say that Steven Anderson was a good father to you?
Ooh, that's a tough one because I don't know. I haven't had any other fathers.
You mentioned that there were some messed up things you went through. Are there any of those that you'd want to talk about?
I mean, just excessive physical punishment. Well, I would never do that to my children. I mean, the side of his head's permanently scarred from that. Smashing Sullivan's head over a concrete windowsill for watching YouTube. So I wouldn't do that because it's barbaric and inhumane and it's just awful. But yeah.
Do you have any, I guess, memories growing up of, your father being very loving or supportive?
I don't know about loving and supportive. I mean, we definitely had some fun times with him.
Right. There was all this intense anger and abuse happening. And then even when it wasn't directed towards you, there was no way to get away from it.
A Lester roll-off home type of a place where it's like a drill instructor and they beat you and...
We were heavily, heavily manipulated, heavily, heavily brainwashed. And I feel stupid how long it took me to see how bad they were and do something about it. When you do eventually realize what's wrong with my parents, don't let that turn you into a jaded, dark person. There are a lot of better people out there. There is good in the world that is not like that, and don't let. And if you hate their version of Christianity and the kind of people they are, don't let that turn you against Christianity completely, because they are not the average Christian.